Hey guys, welcome back to the channel again. So from this video and in the next ones we are going to focus on the i3 window manager. So i3 is a huge topic and it's not possible of course to do it in one video. So in this video we are going to focus on the navigation aspect of i3 and we are going to also have an overview of the configuration file. So let's get going. So if you follow the base install of Arch Linux on UEFI or MBR and you want to install i3, let's get going here and hit Arch Linux on the list. It's going to take a moment to boot up the system. Now we can enter with our username and the password. And there we go. So the first thing we need to do is to check if Reflector is installed in our system. Reflector allows us to have the fastest servers available to download packages. So let's type in sudo pacman -syy and then Reflector and hit enter. We enter our sudo password. And so in my case, Reflector is already installed. As you can see, it says reinstalling. So if it's not in your system, you can go ahead and proceed with the installation by hitting enter. In my case, I'm going to type in N for no and hit enter. Now we can proceed using Reflector by typing in sudo Reflector and then -C for country. So we put in the country where we are right now. Right now I'm in Switzerland, so I'll type in Switzerland. You can replace this, of course, accordingly. And then -A for the age of the servers. And I'm going to type in 6 here. That means only servers which have been updated since 6 hours are going to be in my mirror list. And then --sort, because we need to sort the servers by speed, so rate. And then --save, we need to save this information in our mirror list directory, which is /etc/pacman.d/mirrorlist, and hit enter. Now we can refresh our servers, so we'll type in sudo pacman -syy and hit enter. And there you go. Now let's clean up the terminal and install the packages for i3. So let's type in sudo pacman -s. The first package is xorg. Xorg is our display server. Now, the next package would be a display manager. It could be SDDM, it could be LightDM. However, we have also here another possibility. We could also start i3 with the startx command or with the xinit command. That means normally when I boot up my machine, I go straight into the console and I work normally from the console. And I would basically boot up i3 just when I need it by typing in startx in my console. So you can go ahead and install a display manager like we did, for example, in the desktop environments tutorials. It's going to work exactly the same way. You just install the display manager and then enable it. But in my case, I'm going to install actually xinit. And to do that, I need a package for that, which is called xorg-xinit. And we need also the packages for i3. So the first one is i3-vm, which is going to install the standard i3 window manager. I want to install also the lock screen for i3. So I'm going to type in i3 lock. And we will install also i3 status, which is going to display the status bar at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to install also i3 blocks, which I'm going to use in a later tutorial. And we need to install also a run menu for the program. So in my case, I'm going to choose the menu. And then we can choose also one terminal. Now the terminal is very personal. And if it would be my machine, I would probably install Termite as a terminal, which is one of my favorite terminals. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to install Terminator. And that's because Terminator has some elements of GTK, which we will configure in later tutorials. Then we can go ahead and install also a browser. So in this case, I'm going to install Firefox. And then we can hit enter. Accept the defaults here by hitting enter. And also here, accept the defaults. And now we can proceed with the installation by hitting enter. So it's going to take a moment to download and install, and I'll be back when it's done. There you go, the packages are installed. So let's clean up the terminal. Remember, if you install the display manager, to enable it now with systemctl, enable the name of your display manager. In my case, it's because I downloaded xinit. We need to actually copy the xinit rc file, which we just created in our etc x11 directory, into our home directory. So we do this by typing in sudo cp for copy /etc/x11/xinit and then xinit rc. And we're going to copy this into our home directory, so the tilde character and the slash key. And the file is going to be named again xinit rc. And hit enter. Now, if we display the content of the directory by typing in ls-a, we'll see that there is a xinitrc file that we need to edit. We need to put in this file the information needed to the system in order to start i3. So for these tutorials, by editing documents, I'm going to use the Vim editor. You can use also Nano if you like, or any other editor, but the reason I'm going to use Vim is because it's color coded, and especially when we are working with the configuration file in i3, it makes my work much easier. So I'm going to now edit the xinitrc file by typing in sudo vim and then .xinitrc and hit enter. Now we need to scroll down here to the end of the file and delete these lines here. And we enter the insert mode by typing I on Vim. I go down one line and enter this command exec for execute i3. Exit insert mode by pressing escape and then :WQ to save and quit Vim. Clean up the terminal. And now if we type in start X and hit enter, i3 is going to be started. So we don't have much to see here. We just have a box here coming up asking us if we want to create the configuration file. So this is the only step we need to do really in i3. So we want to create a configuration file, and I definitely recommend you to do so as well. So we just hit enter here. Now in i3 there is a thing called the default modifier. This is basically the basic key we need to hit when we want to perform a command. And by default, the Windows key is selected. If you are on an Apple keyboard, it's going to be the command key. You can change this to the Alt key if you prefer that, but I'm going to go with the standard Windows key and just hit enter. And just so, the configuration file has been created. So there is not much to see here. We have a black background, we have a status bar on the bottom displaying some information like the IP, how much storage we have, and the time and date. And we have here this number 1, which represents the workspace where we are in right now. So it doesn't look particularly attractive right now, but we are going to work on this in this tutorial and also in future tutorials as well. So the basic command that you will have to learn in i3, it's the mod key plus the enter key, which is going to open the terminal. So let's do this. Let's hit mod enter. And here is our terminal. Now we can see immediately there is something wrong here, and that is the resolution of the display is not correct. This is probably because I'm on a virtual machine. If you're installing this on a PC, it's probably going to be okay. And the second thing I know is that my keyboard layout is actually wrong. It's typing on an US keyboard where I have a Swiss keyboard. So we need to fix these two things before we can continue. So let me do this very quickly. We're going to change first the layout of the keyboard by typing in sudo set xkbmap and then the connotation of your keyboard. So I have a Swiss keyboard, which connotation is CH. So I'm going to type in CH here and hit enter. Enter my sudo password. And now my keyboard is working fine. The second thing is we need to change the display resolution because right now it's not full HD. So to do this, I'm going to use xrender and I'm going to type in xrender, then --output. We output to the display, which is virtual-1. And the --mode, this is a full HD display, so I'll type in 1920 by 1080 and hit enter. And now my display resolution is fine. Note that these changes are only valid for this session until we put them in the configuration file in i3, which we will do at the end of the video. So let's clean up the terminal. So let me change the font resolution here because it's a little bit too small. So I go under Preferences and then Profiles. And here I can uncheck this box and click the font box here. And I'm going to select another font, which is Source Code Pro. I'm going to go with a regular one and bump up the size to 14 and click Select. And under scrolling here, I'm going to hide the scrolling bar and click Close. There you go. It's easier to see. So as you probably know already, i3 is a tiling window manager. What does it mean, tiling window manager? Well, it means it tiles the windows side by side. So what happens if we hit again mod enter, as we did now for the first terminal? Let's try that. It opens up a new window on the right side with a new terminal, and it's going to be tiled on the right side of the first terminal. So let me close this. And I want you to pay attention to this blue line on the right side of the screen. This is going to show you where the next window is going to be open. So right now the blue line is here, meaning the next window is going to be tiled here. And that's why when we enter mod enter, the window is there. So we could continue here and creating more windows. Let's create another one and another one. And we have 4 terminals open here. So to close windows, we use the mod shift Q for quit key. So we can repeat this 2 times to go back to one terminal. So mod enter to open the terminals, mod shift Q to close the window. The mod shift Q combination is going to be used also by other applications. So what about if we want to tile windows instead of horizontally, we want to tile them vertically? Well, we need to tell i3 to do that. And to do that, we need to type in mod V And as you can see now, the blue line moved on the bottom of the screen here, meaning that the next window is going to be tiled here. So let's hit Mod Enter, and you see the terminal opens under the first one. And we can continue hitting Mod Enter here, and terminals will always be open on the bottom of the previous terminal. So I'm going to close them with Mod Shift Q. Now, if we want to go back to the horizontal way of tiling windows, we can press Mod H for horizontal, and the blue line is again on the right side of the screen. So we can go ahead here and enter our windows so. And let's close this up. So this is the tiling mode of i3. There are several modes actually on how we can open windows in i3. So let's open up a new terminal. And let's move to the first terminal here. I'm going to show you how to move between windows in a second. There is also another mode in i3 where we can use windows, and that is the stacked mode. To enter stack mode, you would press Mod S. And you see now the windows are stacked on top of each other. So we can move back and forth from one window to the other, but the windows will be always stacked up there. We can also continue creating new terminals by hitting Ctrl Enter, and they're going to be stacked also always on top of the previous one. So we can close the window the same way with Mod Shift Q. And what if we want to go back to tiling mode? Well, we just hit Mod E and we go back in tiling mode. So we have tiling mode, we have stacked mode, and we have also tabbed mode. By hitting Mod W, you see we have two tabs here on top of the screen, one for the first terminal and one for the second terminal. So which method is good for you for tiling the windows is up to you. For me personally, I like the tiling modes, so I go back there by hitting Mod E. But you might experiment with other modes and see what's the best one for you and then decide which one you want to use. Now, we can also resize windows. We have now two terminals here. They are both the same size. So how do we resize windows? Well, we just need to enter Mod R for resize. And as you can see right here on the bottom of the screen, it says now we are in resize mode. So we just use the arrow keys right and left to resize our window. Right now I'm hitting the right arrow, so I make the terminal bigger, and I decrease it by hitting the left arrow. And I go back to the middle here. Now to exit resize mode, we hit again Mod R, and now we can use our windows again normally. So another thing is how we can move between windows in i3. Well, that's very simple. We just hit the Mod key and use the arrow keys to move. So I hit Mod and right arrow, and I move to the second terminal. Same way, I hit Mod and left arrow, and I move back to the first terminal. And there might be instances also where I want to move my terminals from one place to the other. Let's say I want to have this terminal here on the left, on the right side. So how do we do that? Well, we have the combination Mod, Shift, and the arrow key. So if I use Mod, Shift, right arrow, I'm going to move the terminal on the right side and vice versa. If I use Mod, Shift, left arrow, I'm going to move back the terminal on the left side. So these are the basic commands for navigation in i3, and I strongly recommend you to practice them if you're new to the window manager, so that you get familiar with these and you feel more at ease when we are going to explore more complex things in i3. Right now, we just use the first workspace here, which is designed by the number 1 on the bottom right here. But in i3, we have several workspaces we can work with. How we can switch workspaces? Well, for that, we can hit the Mod key and the number of the workspace we want to go to. So for example, if you want to go to the workspace number 2, we hit Mod 2. And of course now the second workspace is empty right now, and it shows here we are on the second workspace. To go back to the first workspace, we use the same combination, Mod 1. And we go back to the first workspace, and the second one is not anymore in the list because it's empty. So now the question is, how do we move some of these things to other workspaces? So again, the Shift key here comes in handy. If we hit Mod Shift 2, the second terminal disappears from the first workspace, and it's moved into the second workspace. And so let's close the terminal up with Mod Shift Q. And you see the second workspace is now empty. So we need to go to the first workspace here with Mod 1. And our other terminal is there. And now workspace number 2 disappears because it's empty. So again, we can create another terminal. And we can move it, let's say, to the workspace number 3. So we'll type in Mod Shift 3. And that terminal is now on workspace number 3. So let's close this up and go back to workspace number 1. So these are the basic commands on how we can move windows around. Now, right now, we just open terminals and we just move them around, resize them, stacking them, tab them, tiling them. We did all we could with terminals here. But how do we open actually other applications? Well, remember we installed dmenu when we installed i3. So to pull up dmenu, which is a runner for the commands, we can hit Mod D for dmenu. And on the top now there is a bar where we can search the program we are looking for. So I want to open up Firefox. So I'll just type in Firefox and it's already there. So I just hit enter. and it's going to open it up here on the right side of the window. Now, this can be handy sometimes if you want to copy and paste stuff from the browser to a terminal, but sometimes you want to have a full screen browser, or you want to have also a full screen terminal at the same time. So what we can do here, we can move, for example, again, Firefox on workspace number 2 by hitting Mod Shift 2. Now, Firefox is gone from here, but if we hit Mod 2 to go to the second workspace, we have Firefox there, and it's full screen. So I think you start to get probably an idea on how i3 actually works. You could have a workspace with a terminal. You can have another workspace with a browser. You could have a third workspace maybe with something like Spotify or a chat program. And you can configure the system to boot up with these applications open in these workspaces all the time, so that when you start a computer, you can work already right away. So we're going to look at all those configurations in future tutorials. For this tutorial, I just wanted to focus on the navigation of i3 and also on an overview of the configuration file that we are going to look right now. Let me first close the browser, and I'll close here all the tabs. There you go, and I'll go back to the first workspace. So again, let's type the content of our home directory here by typing in ls-a. So we have a directory here called .config. So we need to go in there. So let's type in cd.config and hit enter. And then again, let's list the content by typing ls-a. We have an i3 directory here. So we need to go in there. So let's type in cd i3 and hit enter. And if we list again the content of the directory, you see we have a config file in there, and this is the one we need to open. So to do that, I'm going to use again vim. So I'm just going to type in vim config and hit enter. So now you can see why I want to use vim. Comments are blue, and the rest of the commands have another color. So it's for me easier to see because we have so many commands here. It's easier to search also, and it's easier also visually to see what the comments are and what the commands are. But again, this is a matter of personal preference. So we are not going to go too much in depth in the configuration file in this tutorial, but I just want you to have an overview of what's going on here. So the configuration file is based on comments. The comments are going to tell you what the following command is doing. And it's a good thing to have a look at it and see what they do, these commands. So for example, you see the first one here, set mod. This is setting the mod key to mod 4, which is the Windows key. This is the one we chose at the beginning of the video. This one, for example, the font for the window titles. Right now, it's monospace 8, so you could change it here. If we scroll down, for example, we have here start a terminal. Bind sim means key binding, so we are binding two keys, the mod key, the Windows key, and the return key is going to execute the terminal available in the system. Kill focus window. Bind sim mod shift q. This is what we use to kill windows. For example, start D menu. Bind sim mod D, what we used to open Firefox before. Execute dmenu_run, which is a command to run dmenu. And so on. So you have a lot of key bindings here, which are the basic configuration of your system. For example, here to navigate to different windows, we can use the Vim keys if you're used to that, or we can use also the arrow keys like we did before. For example, here, bind sim mod H, this is to split horizontally. Bind sim mod V to split vertically. We used this before as well. And we have many other key bindings in the configuration file. So it's a good practice to have a look in here. It's very well and very easy explained so that you can understand what actually your system is doing before you change anything. One thing which I want to take your attention to is how actually the configuration file is working with workspaces. So the configuration file sets variables. So we are telling the system here that the variable vs1, we know it's a variable because it has the $sign here. We know that this variable is going to be representing the number 1, which is the one we see down here. So it means workspace 1 variable, it's going to display a number 1. The same goes for the other workspaces here. The beauty of this is that when you configure a new key binding for workspaces, you just need to specify the variable without putting the name itself, because you might forget to do that if you put other names also in these workspaces. So to have the variables already done here, it's a very, very practical thing. And we are going to configure these also in the next tutorials. Now let's scroll down again. So here we have, for example, moved focus container to workspace. This is what we did before when we moved Firefox from workspace 1 to workspace 2. So mod shift and then the number you want to move to is going to take that application or that container to the corresponding workspace. Now down here we have 3 commands which we haven't used yet. One is the bind sim mod shift C, which is going to reload the configuration file once you do changes on it. And the second one is the bind sim mod shift R, which is going to restart i3 when you make a configuration change. Most of the times we will have to do this for the configuration change to take effect, but in some cases we will be forced to use the third command, which is mod-shift-E for exit. So in this case, we need to exit i3 and log in again. Now, let's scroll down here to the end of the file because we need to put in some commands here. And my recommendation to you is if you are new to i3 and you're starting to work on the configuration file, use comments. Comments are going to help you out. Always have a visible clue of what the commands do, because we are going to configure this configuration file with several commands, and if you don't put any comment in there, you might searching for commands, or some of them you don't even remember what they do. So what I'm going to do right now, I have to put here two commands for the keyboard layout and for my resolution, so that when my machine boots up, it's going to have the correct layout for my keyboard, and it's going to have also the correct resolution for my display. So I'll move down here to the last line of the file, and I'll hit I in Vim to go to insert mode. And I'll go down 2 lines here, and I'm going to insert a comment first. So I'm going to put in a hashtag, and then the first thing I'm going to do is the keyboard layout. So the comment here will be keyboard layout. And then I'm going to move down 1 line and delete this time the hashtag because it's not a comment, it's going to be a command here. And before we can type the command, we need to tell the system to execute it. So we'll type in exec for execute. Now for execute, we have 2 variations. We have the normal exec, which is this one right here. And we have also the exec_always command. The difference between the two depends on the application you want to execute when you start i3. In the case of the keyboard layout, the best practice is to use the exec_always command because we want to have this layout always available to us, whether we boot the machine, whether we restart i3, or whether we exit and relog in again. In some other cases, for example, like Firefox or another application, the exec command will suffice, because otherwise, every time we make a change to the configuration file and we restart it, we're going to have a new instance of the Firefox application open. And if we make several configuration changes, we will end up with many instances of Firefox open. So it really depends on the application or the command that you want to use this with. So for the keyboard layout, the exec_always command, it's the best one. And then we set the command we want to tell the system to do. So set x key bmap and then ch and hit enter. Now let's move down 1 line because we need to put also here in the resolution of my display. Now you probably don't need to do this because if you're installing on a PC, your resolution will be fine, but I have to because I'm on a virtual machine. So again, I'll type in a comment, and here I will put display resolution. Now go down 1 line and delete the hashtag because it's going to be a command here. And I'm going to type in exec. And again, I'm going to use the same parameter _always because I want my resolution to be always 1080p. And then I can put in my xrender command. So I'll type in xrender --output. We need to tell xrender which display. So in my case, it's virtual-1. And then --mode, and the mode is 1920, so 1920 per 1080. And then we can escape the insert mode here in Vim by hitting the escape key and hit the :WQ to save and quit Vim. And now if we restart i3 by hitting mod-shift-R, you can see I have the same resolution and my keyboard has also the correct layout. Let's see what happens if we log out. Let's press mod-shift-E for exit. And we have to confirm this here with the mouse. And we are back in our terminal. So let me clean this up and type in again start X and hit enter. And there you go. So if I open up a terminal, you see it has the same resolution and it has also the same keyboard layout. So everything works perfectly. So this is the base navigation and configuration in i3. On the next tutorial, we are going to go, of course, a step further. We are going to change more things in the configuration file. We are going to start to also customize certain things. And in future tutorials, we will go more in depth about customizing i3. For now, I really recommend you to practice these navigation keys. I will put a link to these in the video description below. Or another thing you can do is also to visit the i3.org website, which contains the documentation for i3. It's extremely well written and very easy to understand. So I'll put a link to this also in the video description below. So again, practice as much as you can these key bindings, especially if you're new to i3. Once you are accustomed to those, you will feel much more at ease where we're going to configure more things in other tutorials. So this is how you can navigate through i3. I definitely recommend you to practice these key bindings to feel comfortable in it, because in the next tutorials they are going to come in very handy. Also, have a look at the configuration file. It's not difficult to understand, it's very clear in what it does, just so that I have an idea on what happened in your system and how you might customize it in the future. In the next video, we're going to focus more on the configuration file, and we will begin also to customize a little bit more our i3 installation. I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the like button below and sub to the channel if you haven't already. Subs always helps us out. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so by visiting our Patreon website, or you can donate via PayPal through our website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.